Just a heads up, this is the second part of a video analyzing Breath of the Wild. In part 1 of this video, we looked at how the Great Plateau sets the precedent for freedom and exploration through meaningful distractions and interesting open space. Before proceeding here, you should check that video out for some nice context. But if you're all ready to go, then let's dive into what else the Plateau introduces to us before setting us loose in Hyrule. So after using the Sheikah Slate to raise the first tower, a task that can take you anywhere between 30 seconds to an hour, depending on how well focused you are, we get some more exposition from our friend the Old Man, and he encourages us to take a dive into our first shrine. These shrines are something that is touted as being an important part of this game. With 120 of them to find throughout Hyrule, they act not as a replacement for traditional Zelda dungeons, but as the game's form of Link's growth plan. A game's growth plan is the way the game sets up the player to feel more powerful and accomplished by the end of the game versus the beginning. A well set up growth plan should feel gradual but rewarding, and be especially noticeable when we find ourselves easily taking out enemies that we struggled with early in the game. A great example of this would be going back to the Plateau and exacting your revenge on these poor, half-buried guardians that would totally one-shot us earlier in the game. The shrines do this by rewarding us with spirit orbs that basically act as replacements for heart pieces. You can cash in 4 spirit orbs to expand either Link's stamina or heart containers, meaning that Link can either grow to stand a better chance in combat, or to be able to go longer doing things like climbing, sprinting, or paragliding, anything that would normally deplete your stamina gauge. And wouldn't you know it, there are exactly 4 shrines, therefore 4 spirit orbs, to obtain on the Plateau, meaning that in order to proceed out into the world, we need to have a taste of this growth plan. We cannot leave the Plateau until Link is stronger in some way. But what else do these shrines provide us with? It just so happens that these first 4 shrines are the most important in all of Hyrule. Not just because they set the precedent for what else there is to find later in the game, but they give us the 4 main rune abilities that we'll need to use and master in order to solve Hyrule's many puzzles. Many of these puzzles have a focus on the game's physics, which just so happens to be a great application for these runes. Due to encouragement from the Old Man and proximity, the first shrine you'll likely end up visiting is Shrine Omen Ao, where you will receive the Magnesis rune. The shrine is designed in a way that teaches you the applications that this will have in conjunction with the game's physics, whether it be lifting something out of the way to discover what's underneath, using a heavy block to shove things out of your way, and even engage enemies, building bridges, or opening heavy doors. These basics carry over to the rest of the game and are expanded upon even more greatly in future shrines and dungeons. The same goes for the other 3 rune shrines. From vaulting bombs back and forth, or learning how to use the Cryonis rune as a quick defense, or to push open this gate, or to reach higher ground, or using stasis to abuse physics. I also really love that there's a use for these runes right outside the shrines you obtain them in, to really reinforce in the player's head that these are not exclusively meant to be used in shrines, but have a real application in the world. What I like about this approach, that is, rather than progressively giving us our main items throughout the game, as in previous Zelda titles, the game refines down what's useful and gives us all 4 main abilities within the first hours. What I like about this is how it gives the player freedom to explore anywhere in any direction, and rather than consistently building new puzzles around the newest cool item, only for it to be forgotten later, just think of how underused the spinner was in Twilight Princess, the game instead gives us a smaller amount of abilities with greater application. Since these are used greatly in the world and on the world's physics, they can be used more widely and interestingly than, say, just putting a hookshot target on a high ledge. And this is meant as no dig to past titles and how they handle items. Obviously, I am a huge Zelda fan and I love how these games have been designed, but I also understand that Breath of the Wild is not like other Zelda games in its approach to items, and that's okay. And using runes to discover secrets is not the only thing we learn in the Plateau. While wandering, it's likely you'll stumble upon the old man's cottage where you may find him sitting with the cooking pot. In order to make it to one of the shrines, you'll need to learn how to cook some food that will give you a cold resistance bonus, and here our gathering and cooking skills are taught. The old man's diary tells you that the cooking spicy food gives you this bonus, and gathering nearby spicy peppers will yield just that food. Getting the warm doublet also shows us the different sort of effects that clothing can have, again, via cold resistance. Now, a design choice to teach you, via gameplay, mechanics and concepts that will be reused later in the game is nothing new to Nintendo or any good game developer. But what strikes me as being important here is how well this design choice is carried forward into the game. These mechanics are something that won't just be used in one dungeon with an item used to beat that dungeon boss. All of these runes, and cooking, and the changing of your clothes, have applications that carry across the entire game, and they all begin here on the Great Plateau.